You know exactly how to stabilize someone on the worst day of their life. But what if the very same training that makes you a master at managing other people's trauma is actually the thing systematically dismantling your own mind? Welcome to a special report from the Human Error News Network. I'm your host for this explainer, and today we're diving straight into a really dangerous cognitive dissonance in our field. It's called the rescuer's vulnerability paradox. If you're a disaster mental health professional, a first responder, or honestly anyone on the front lines of crisis, hit subscribe or bookmark this right now, because what we're going to cover could quite literally save your career. Okay, let's get real for a second. Ask yourself this: if you're the one holding the line during a massive disaster, who exactly is holding you when the secondary traumatic stress finally kicks in? We spend hundreds of hours learning how to triage the psychological bleeding of victims, yet when we go home, we just stare at the ceiling, totally unable to process our own stuff. You know that disconnect, right? That creeping, heavy exhaustion that a cup of coffee and a weekend off just doesn't fix anymore? It's a massive pain point we whisper about in the break room, but we rarely confront it with actual science. Look, we've got to stop treating compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and burnout like they're personal failures. You aren't weak just because you feel exhausted. These are our shared, totally predictable occupational hazards. We're carrying the weight of human suffering every single day, and the human brain just wasn't designed to process that level of ambient trauma indefinitely without some kind of shield. So how do we fix it together? How do we build a shield that actually works?
To figure out how we actually survive this work, I want to unpack a landmark 2022 study by Burnett and colleagues published in the International Journal of Crisis, Stress, and Human Resilience. As an expert peer, I can tell you this research is an absolute game changer. They didn't just pass out a survey asking people how they felt, they legitimately measured the resilience of 343 trained disaster mental health responders, people exactly like you and me, and compared them directly against a general population sample of over 500 people right in the thick of a global pandemic.
And the researchers didn't just guess here. They used heavy-hitting scientific tools. We're talking the CD-RISC-10 to measure overall resilience, the Mindful Attention Awareness Scale, the new General Self-Efficacy Scale, and the Perceived Stress Scale. They isolated the exact variables that keep first responders from breaking under pressure. Basically, they were looking for the actual biological and psychological blueprint for survival.
And what they discovered is a measurable, actionable phenomenon called psychological body armor, or PBA. Now, this isn't some abstract, fluffy wellness buzzword. It is the exact, evidence-based shield you need to endure a career in crisis management. Think about it. You wouldn't send a tactical team into a hot zone without Kevlar, right? Well, you absolutely cannot deploy your mind into a trauma zone without psychological body armor. The framework elegantly maps out how this armor is constructed. It actually operates on two completely distinct yet interdependent pathways. First, you have proactive resilience. This is your anticipatory immunity. It's the mental architecture you build to mitigate the impact of trauma before it ever even hits you. Second is reactive resilience. This is your recovery capacity. It's your ability to rebound, stabilize, and heal after you've already taken the hit.
But hold on a second. Let's pause right here. What happens if your reactive pathway is just entirely broken? We all know that suffocating feeling of being way too exhausted to bounce back. You run a call, you absorb the trauma, and instead of rebounding, you just sink deeper into it. If your reactive system is fried, literally no amount of sleep is going to fix it. If you've ever felt that exact kind of exhaustion, drop a yes in the comments right now so we can see just how widespread this really is. And this is exactly why we need to shift our focus and look at what the data says about proactively bulletproofing your mind before the alarm ever rings.
The data from the Burnett study proves, without a doubt, that we can actively protect our mental health by building proactive buffers. Out of all the variables they tested, two stood out as massive predictors of resilience capacity: mindfulness and self-efficacy. If you want to survive and thrive in disaster mental health, you have to realize these aren't optional soft skills. They are your primary biological defenses.
Let's break those down, starting with self-efficacy. The crucial thing to understand here is that self-efficacy isn't just standing in front of a mirror pumping yourself up with fake confidence. It's a deeply ingrained neurological anchor. It's the genuine, tested belief in your coping capabilities to meet specific situational demands. When absolute chaos erupts around you, a high level of self-efficacy creates realistic expectations and physically downregulates your nervous system. You don't panic, simply because your brain fundamentally trusts your training.
Then there's mindfulness, which basically acts as a shock absorber for your mind. The study shows it actually mediates the impact of the stress response to adverse events. It allows you to be highly aware of the trauma unfolding right in front of you and aware of your own internal reaction to it, without letting that trauma hijack your limbic system. You observe the crisis, you act on it, but you do not absorb it into your identity.
So how do you actually build this stuff into your day? The qualitative data from the study found that spiritual well-being is highly correlated with proactive resilience. In fact, researchers identified 14 specific spiritual wellness routines that elite responders actively use to maintain their psychological immunity. We're talking about daily habits like meditation, prayer, reading philosophical literature, or just engaging in quiet contemplation. They aren't just hoping they're okay, they're actively maintaining their armor every single day.
Now this is where things get really fascinating. When you compare us, the trauma pros, with critical incident stress management training, to the general public, the predictors for bouncing back reveal a massive difference. The general population relies heavily on physical fitness and basic nutrition to recover. But for us, the #1 predictor of reactive resilience was our ability to self-recognize our own signs of compassion fatigue, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. Self-awareness literally becomes our superpower.
And it gets even crazier. The qualitative analysis found a staggering 99% consistency rate, proving that having professional CISM training contributes massively to strong, long-term resilience. 99%. Seriously, take a screenshot of this right now and send it to your command staff or agency directors. Professional intervention training isn't just a tool for helping victims. It is the exact thing that keeps responders alive and functioning over a decades-long career.
So I want you to audit your own routine right now. Because the study also pointed out that to keep your reactive pathway intact, you must deliberately optimize your sleep quality, maintain physical fitness, dial in your daily nutrition, and absolutely crucial here, establish authentic, supportive, personal relationships. You cannot isolate yourself. And above all, you must be willing to utilize formal crisis intervention services for yourself. You have to be willing to sit in the same chair you normally put your clients in.
Let's turn this into an actual roadmap you can take to your next deployment. Here is your psychological body armor checklist. First, fiercely self-recognize your burnout symptoms. Do not ignore the cynicism or the exhaustion. Second, establish a non-negotiable daily mindfulness or spiritual routine to build up that proactive buffer. And third, proactively locate and utilize formal peer support and crisis intervention services. You've got to build the armor long before the bullets start flying.
You've got the data now. You know the science of psychological body armor. If this special report from the Human Error News Network gave you a new perspective today, make sure to hit subscribe so we can continue bulletproofing our field together. But remember, just knowing the science doesn't make you immune. Action does. So before the next mass casualty event or critical incident drops into your lap, you have to ask yourself, are you actively forging your armor today? Or are you just hoping your title alone will save you when the darkness comes? Because if the rescuer's mind finally shatters, who's left to catch the victims?